whatever they do, they need to set up power generation, and something that is essential to set up is in situ resource utilization, or basically a fuel plant that pulls carbon out of the atmosphere, and does a chemical process on it to create methane that will then refuel the ship. And as a byproduct of that process, you'll get water and oxygen, which you
That's
can
what
use.
I wanted to ask. How do we get water? Because H2O is the most important part there. So you take what?
So it's a process called the Sabatier process, and I'm not a chemist, so I'm probably going to get a lot of this wrong. But you bring along a tank of hydrogen, and that's the sort of what Mars is deficient in. But you bring a hydrogen tank, you run it through this machine that does chemical stuff, and you get.
We're getting pro level here on the.
Yeah, we're really getting technical here.
All right.
You get methane and water out of it, and you can electrolyze the water then back into hydrogen and oxygen.
Nice.
And so for a rocket to work, you need a fuel, which for the Starship is methane. And part of the reason they chose methane is because you can do this process on Mars. And you also need
a few steps ahead while making the rockets.
100%, yeah, 100%.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah. You also need a source of oxygen to oxidize your fuel and burn it. And so for rockets, because there's no air in space, you can't pull the oxygen out of space, and there's no oxygen on Mars, it's a carbon dioxide atmosphere. You use a tank of liquid oxygen. So standard rocket construction includes a tank of liquid oxygen for when they're not in the atmosphere anymore. So that's what you do. You start those machines running, you generate a big tank of methane, a big tank of liquid oxygen, and then you can refuel your rocket. And because you're on Mars, you don't need a big booster to take off and go back to Earth. You actually only need, for launching from Earth, you need the big booster, which is 70 meters tall on its own, and then there's a 50 meter Starship on top.
Nice.
So you need the big booster to get the Starship into orbit, but Starship will need to burn most of its own propellant to make orbit, even with the booster. Then you need to launch, I think, 5 or 6 further Starships to give the remainder of their fuel to that original Starship, which is now in Earth orbit. And that will top up the tanks in that, and then it can fly to Mars. When it gets to Mars, it'll land. You create fuel in this manner, restock the ship, and that may take a few months to generate enough to restock the ship. But once you do, that ship can take off from the surface of Mars and do the transfer burn back to Earth and land on Earth, all on the fuel that you generate on Mars. It doesn't need any top-ups after that. So that illustrates the difference that the higher gravity on Earth makes. You need all of that extra fuel to get away from Earth.
Yeah.
And the reason that that's important is because launching from Mars to get out to the asteroid belt is going to be incredibly lucrative.
Hey, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see the full version, go to the Uncle Gold Podcast YouTube channel or watch the next clip.